So I went and collected Elaine, Harry and Joe from the train station at about 11 p.m. last night. Now they've been in London all day and they went to be like proper tourists, whizzing around and, taking, snapshots of things. And they went and did like a Minecraft experience with Harry, which everybody enjoyed, by the way, not just Harry. Now we live nowhere near London. We live sort of, top to the middle, of the UK. So we all had to get up pretty early in order for me to get them to the train station on time. I will add, quite reluctantly, for the three of them, because they're all night owls. They love their beds. So as you can imagine, by the time I'd picked them up and we got home, Harry and Elaine and Joe too, was pretty exhausted. But if you're a parent, you'll understand, if you've got kids, right, overtired children can almost resist wanting to go to sleep. They fight you on the point. And Harry's had like a particular line that is used on us over the years, like many kids I'm sure do. And his is, I don't know how to sleep. And this is what he said to me last night. It's something that he's said, like his little phrase, since he was really little, probably because it used to work, a few years ago, and we just let it slide. It's almost like this genuine expression. There's like a strange disconnect between knowing that you need rest, because he even said to me, he said, I am tired, but then feeling unable to actually find your way there, to the point of just closing your eyes and letting go. Now, when he was about 4 years old, I taught him just some really basic breathing techniques. He's always been super inquisitive, about everything that Elaine and I do, with our clients and the coaching side of things. And he's seen me doing this breathing before. So when he was about 4 years old, I taught him how to breathe into his belly, so in through his nose, very slow pace out through his mouth. And then I actually showed him, during bedtime. So when he'd lay down in his bed and he would say, I don't know how to sleep, I would say, cool, close your eyes and just breathe exactly like I do, in through your nose, out of your mouth. And it was like a guaranteed way to have him feel relaxed, go to sleep, and for me to get on with the rest of the evening with Elaine. And anyway, last night I did that with him. I reminded him, well, you remember the breathing thing? And he was like, oh yeah. Sure enough, in through the nose, out of the mouth. And, by the time he'd got to breath 32, because I was counting, he was asleep. I could just see his little body just melting into his bed. His neck started to just, disappear into his pillow. Thumbs up. Bit of a dad win, on my part. But more importantly, he was now, in slumberland getting what he needed. And, I'm the type of person, I look at everything and how it's connected, the interconnection between everything that I do, my personal life, just for me, for my relationship, for the business, for clients, as a dad, as a son. And I couldn't help but think about, the clients, the people that we look after, as Harry was sort of just relaxing and going to sleep from such a simple cue that I'd given him. So many coaches come to us in that state that Harry was experiencing last night. Exhausted, overwhelmed, unable to, switch their minds off. Yet, a little bit like, our children, they're still fighting, still pushing back against the need for change or the requirement to sometimes rest and switch off. And I've heard a lot of statements over the years, but closely related to this, coaches have said, I don't know how to build a business that doesn't exhaust me. I don't know how to get clients without constant hustle, or I don't know how to market myself authentically. And they'll tell me, they've tried everything: complex marketing funnels, endless content creation, sophisticated sales techniques, multiple offers, aggressive networking, you name it, they've tried it. It's a long list. And just like Harry, after his long day in London, they're overwhelmed, overstimulated, and paradoxically too wired to rest despite being exhausted. And I hate to be the bearer of simplistic news, but often the solution to that is embarrassingly simple. And it's like what I consider it a return to fundamentals, a return to baseline. It's like the business equivalent of remembering how to breathe. It's like this peculiar phenomenon, I guess, that I see in the coaching industry. And I guess it's the longer that someone spends being a coach, or the better they become, the more likely they are to have abandoned the fundamentals to have got them in the position that they're in right now. And I don't think it's a conscious choice. It happens invisibly. It happens gradually, and you only need to be on social media, for 5 or 10 minutes to be served adverts that are telling you, how to scale your business. And you start consuming that kind of content. And then you see the next person who maybe you're friends with or who you're following, and they've got multiple offers, they've got fancy funnels, and these deeply sophisticated marketing sequences. And then through that sort of barrage of sophistication and complexity, doubt starts to creep in. Maybe my approach is too simple. Perhaps I need to add more complexity to justify the rates that I charge. What if I'm missing something that everyone knows and I don't? And there you have it. Before long, there's a complete abandonment of the baseline fundamentals that got them into the position that they're in now. Genuine, real, honest, heartfelt conversations just go out of the window. Solving real problems that are connected to those people just fucking disappear into the abyss. And they start to get replaced with complexity that feel foreign and actually do a worse job than the things that got them to where they are right now. You probably tell. It frustrates me a little bit. It pisses me off. Simplicity is something that we've screamed from the rooftops for years. The amount of times we've had to dig coaches out of their own businesses because they've been buried in complexity. I've not got enough fingers or toes, to give you the amount. And the nature of that beast is that they end up making less money and having less joy in their own business. And there's just been this huge trade-off. Fundamentals for complexity, simplicity for sophistication. And the worst one that breaks my heart is authenticity for automation. Ugh. Now, just as I reminded Harry, of his breathing to get him to sleep the other night, I'm often put in a position of where I'm reminding great coaches of how they need to breathe into their business again. Don't get caught up in thinking that these are flashy, by the way, because they're certainly not. You might even be a little bit disappointed with how simple these things are. But like Harry's 32 breaths, they work. So the first one, is something that's really close to my heart, is consistent and meaningful conversations. Not automated sequences, not clever landing pages, not even brilliant content, to be completely honest. You see, when you listen more than you speak, you start to create a very special connection. I don't consider myself to be an old timer, but I have got a bit of experience now in the coaching industry, and I can tell you the landscape of technology has drastically changed how humans interact with each other. And from my personal perspective, humans are craving deeper connection, meaningful connection, where they feel heard, where they feel seen, where they feel listened to. And this is such a baseline fundamental for client acquisition that a lot of coaches that have been seeking complexity completely abandon. They've just stopped having enough conversations, and they've replaced direct conversations with indirect content in the hope that the right people will just see that thing and just get in touch off their own back. Now, that can happen, absolutely. But if you serve humans, if you look after people, why wouldn't you go out and have conversations? It just baffles me. So the takeaway from this, I would schedule purposefully to have a set amount of meaningful, deep. So the takeaway from this would be to set a schedule, to set an amount of deep, meaningful conversations that you go out and have. Not sales calls, not pitches, just a genuine curiosity to see if you can serve somebody with what you do. The second thing is having one core transformation. I've watched over the years, a lot of coaches make this mistake of adding more to their menu, a little bit like McDonald's. Again, strangely enough, McDonald's actually isn't as profitable as a lot of other businesses in the world. Yeah, they are absolutely massive, but if you actually look at the raw numbers, they're nowhere near, I believe, Wendy's. The other thing I've watched so many coaches do over the years is just create more and more offers for different people. And there's just this huge diluting effect that this has. Particularly if you're trying to run a small, lean team, maybe it's just you, maybe it's just two of you like Elaine and I. The more things you have to try and sell to people, and the more different types of people you're trying to sell to, that adds a weight and a burden onto the marketing that you're trying to build, one that typically you can just never keep up with. Just this really confusing menu of offers that people just don't understand. The highest degree of success we see with people that we've looked after for the last 10 years, they have one core offer, they sell to one type of person, and they deliver that thing and get amazing world-class results. They might package that differently for different contexts, but the essential change that they get remains consistent throughout. So the takeaway I'd give you from this is define your offer, define that single thing that you do for your person, for that individual, and commit to sticking with that rather than believing that the more that you add, the more success, the more money, the more clients you're going to gain. You don't want that sort of complexity, I'm telling you. Now, the third thing is consistent visibility with a statement of problem, solution, difference. Now, again, once you've got the one thing that you offer, it makes the visibility that you have around it, again, much simpler, much easier to understand. Number three is essentially where I see coaches just overthinking their content strategy, trying to create this perfect blend of education, inspirational and promotional materials. Add in then the wanting to post all of that stuff across multiple platforms, and that again is another recipe for disaster. Keep this simple framework in mind. What's the problem? How do you solve it? What makes your approach different? Yeah, you can vary things up. You can have stories, you can have examples of testimonials and people you've worked with. The format of your content, it could be video, it could be written, but the core message that you get across through each piece needs, again, like your offer, to remain consistent. I always think of this like banging a drum or beating a drum. Your people will be attracted to the rhythm of that drum that you beat. Where if one day you're beating one type of drum and then you stop, and then the next day you're beating a different kind of drum, your people are never going to be close enough or pulled into your proximity enough if you're just stopping and starting on different types of instruments. So the game is play that same instrument relentlessly over and over and over. Like when I was younger, when I'd learned to play the guitar, at first the noise of your drum it might annoy some people. It might put some people off coming near you, but that's a good thing. Marketing isn't about attracting everybody. It's actually about repelling more people than attracting. So the takeaway from this is think about the problem that you solve, how you do it, and how your approach is different. And then communicate this consistently. Beat your drum so everybody can hear the noise. Probably one of the most valuable things I offer people when they come to work with us is the permission to simplify, permission to focus, permission to put trust back into the fundamentals. In a world of where the answer to everything is sold as complexity, simplicity almost becomes like a radical act. My own experience of simplicity has created space for mastery. Anytime I get locked into a place where I feel like I can't escape thinking about complexity or adding weight to the vehicle, it just slows the vehicle down. It consumes my mind and my energy. I don't feel great about it. So how do you find your way back to the simplicity of in through the nose, out of the breath when it comes to your business, particularly if you've wandered into complexity? Well, a really neat place to start is by doing an audit on your business. Really make note of what's depleting your energy in your business right now. What tasks, what offers, what marketing activities leave you feeling drained rather than energized? My encouragement would be, if you make a list, and you've got these particular things circled that are draining your energy, you need to drop them like a bad smell. The next thing I would do is I would look back at the earlier days of your business. Try and recall the things that got you to the position that you're in now. What were you doing? What was your message before you tried to make it more sophisticated than it needed to be? How were you connecting with people before you built all these elaborate systems that put disconnect between you and them? I often give people a month's challenge of where they will do a consistent audit for 4 weeks, 30 days, somewhere in that sort of time period, and they will remove the complexity and just reinstall something more fundamental, more basic, something simpler to operate. Sometimes it is the fundamental and basic thing that then yields a better result, But more often than not, it's actually the energy that's regained through simplicity that is the more powerful thing on the front end, which gives you the ability to market how you actually are as a person, your authentic self. I just think it's so bizarre that, we have to remind each other, like I'm reminding you right now, and maybe someday you'll need to remind me, that simplicity requires courage. It takes courage to focus on the fundamentals when everyone around us seems to be obsessing about complexity. It takes courage to communicate simply when everyone is encouraging us to add more sophistication and complexity to how we speak to each other. It takes courage to trust that providing a client with a world-class experience is way more valuable than more upsells and more offers and more marketing arms than you can handle. But trust me, you're not beyond the basics. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one.